Hey, it's Jeremy.
Hey, it's Mike.
We are the Fighting Photographers,
A podcast where we talk photography, gear, and life.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Jeremy.
How's it going?
It is good.
It's good.
Yeah. We're here again. Still trying to figure this whole podcast thing out, but you know, that's part of the fun of it.
It is, and they'll only get better. Sorry, for those of you who can't see what just happened, I winked at the camera. You're missing out. So check out our YouTube channel.
That's right. You can see my new haircut. I was going to make some weird lie and say I shaved my head or something just to get people to look, but...
No. It looks good. I'm jealous. I have no hair, which is why I'm wearing a hat. So, Mike, here's the question for today, or the topic. It's styled shoots versus quote-unquote real shoots.
All right.
Right? So the difference, we obviously know what a styled shoot is. Right?
Tell us anyways.
Right.
What would we, or what would you? Maybe I'll disagree with you. How do you describe styled shoot?
So styled shoots I consider highly planned. They usually involve a model, or at least someone model-like, probably atypical, not a normal person. They don't look like me, Mike. Right?
Got it. I can picture it
You
now.
can see I'm making this easy for you. And you might have a makeup artist, depending upon the styled shoot. You might have planned a location, and it might not be one you normally shoot in. You might rent studio space. It might be somewhere more exotic. Maybe you're shooting in New York City because you're on vacation or you're going to be visiting somewhere. Maybe you've chosen clothes, so you've meticulously, or you've even got a stylist. It's not unusual to have a styled shoot where you have somebody come in that has a wardrobe that you can use, or that you borrow, or you buy in return and leave the tags on at the end of the day. I've seen that as well.
I was about to say we've all done it, let's be honest, but
I'm not sure I have.
there's certain companies out there that are easier to do that with than others.
Right. So to me, styled is really that you're kind of putting together a whole package, and it is not typical of maybe the normal person shoot. Sure, we can get into kind of commercial photography where everything is naturally styled.
Sure.
But if you're shooting,
So would you then say too? I think at least where a majority of our time is spent is typically like wedding and portrait industry.
Right.
I think. So kind of a little bit, I would say niche for this podcast, definitely focusing more on that industry, because I would agree with you. I mean, commercial shoots almost automatically you kind of add in those factors. Not always, but generally there's a lot more involved in a commercial shoot. So today we're kind of already caveating, like this is more focused a little bit on wedding portrait side of the photography industry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, because I agree. I think that's a great, that's a very holistic version and picture. Styled shoot can be as in-depth. It can include all of those things, or it could, maybe have one or two pieces or parts of it. But any version or any combination of all those things, is definitely, so that's sort of, I think we can agree there. I'll give you, we can agree on that.
We're off to a good start.
Now let's fight.
So I will say that, we talk about portraiture and weddings are kind of funny because in a way, weddings are a styled event.
It's true.
Right? You have a venue, they have a makeup and hair artist.
A lot of money and time invested into styling.
Right. Now, while you're not picking your model at that point, there's definitely kind of a more styled, type of shoot, an event. Everything's planned the entire day, right? I think that kind of fits into a styled shoot category just by its nature. So even if you have a photojournalist approach, there's a styled aspect.
Yeah.
So maybe it makes more sense to concentrate on more portraiture type things when we might be talking about family photos or senior photography.
Yeah. Well, I think, I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. The fact of, there's a lot of, like I said, time and money invested into styling a wedding. But I think as the artist, oftentimes what we are drawn to, or why we're drawn to these styled shoots or workshops or, things like that, is oftentimes to even sometimes just simply just build our portfolio. So I would say no matter what, whether it's wedding or portrait, we're like, hey, I want to go and I want to add some really cool images or really specific images to my portfolio. So I'm going to sign up for this workshop because, let's be honest, half the time you're like, I don't really care what they're saying. There's a styled shoot at the end of it. And I want to do I want the portfolio pictures, and maybe I'll pick up a few tips here or there from the actual workshop. Or I think a lot of photographers realize most people are actually more interested in the actual portfolio building, the styled shoot. And so they have even cut the workshop out completely, and they just offer styled shoots. They do all the effort. They pull together their resources, and they create a, sign up and just pay your money and come and take some great pictures of this shoot that I've put together. So I think it still applies to both scenario, or both wedding and portrait, in the sense that there's a few and there's a few things that we're going to touch on today as to why I think they can be really beneficial, and I think also there's definitely some pitfalls along the way.
And we've a lot of these topics we've talked about previously, and I have the sense or the kind of the opinion that photographers in general shouldn't be using styled shoots in their portfolio. Most of the time when I've seen these, they're other people's styled shoots, for one, the things you were just talking about, right? It's really, they're taking pictures of other people's work is what that feels like.
Sure.
And sometimes it's more marketing and advertising that may not be representative of what their clients are actually getting when they go to shoot them.
Sure.
Right. And when you go to those workshops or people are setting up a group shoot for a styled shoot, those things are not anything like what your typical, for most, not always, right? Portrait session for folks or things like that. Obviously, if you go get a portrait from Chris Knight, everything is, he's high-end portrait photographer. Everything is super styled. But most of the people you see, these natural light photographers out in fields, backlit, kind of the typical thing. And every once in a while, you'll see them with this super hyper stylized kind of image.
You mean that wasn't just their neighbor next door who hired him for a family portrait?
Yeah, and the BTS all of a sudden has the makeup artist and the hair, the person doing hair, and the person helping with lights, and the person of the fan, right? That's right. and but at the end of the day, when their customers go, it's just going to be them and the camera, a couple lenses, and they're out in the field. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a judgment on that, but it seems a little bit deceptive. Right?
Sure. So then the question is, I think you bring up there is that is it deceiving to your client to incorporate, to blend in images from a styled shoot with your everyday clients and blend those into a single portfolio?
I think so. I think so. It's one thing to maybe have a better shoot. You always go for optimal images when you're shooting for your client. But the environment or just the client, they're not all models, and even if a model looks like a regular person, they don't know how to move. So they might look a little bit more stiff, or the facial expressions might not be there. And so I think, again, it feels a little deceptive. I think the closer you can get to how you really shoot, I think maybe it becomes okay.
Yeah.
But it tends to be one thing or the other. You either see these really styled shoots,
sure,
or not.
Yeah.
Right? And
I think we'll talk on that a little bit later, in terms of, I think there's definitely some good ways that you can use styled shoots.
Sure.
But for now, in terms of deceiving or not deceiving, for me, that is hard. It's tricky. Because I've over the years, I've attended workshops, and there's even sometimes they'll actually have really strict rules on image usage. And sometimes they don't, and so I think, but to your point, one of the best ones I remember early on, they actually, one of the requirements is that, the images you take, they're yours to use, but if you post them, you had to post them in a way that you could credit essentially the workshop, that you could credit the stylist, the creator. You had to credit the team of people that were involved in producing that image. So you still owned the image, you pushed the button, you still was your artistic creation of creating that single photo, but you also were acknowledging the 10 other people,
Right.
which meant you could only really use it on social media where you could caption, tag people, or on a blog post. So if it couldn't go directly into your portfolio, because portfolio is just a body of images with no text. And I think, to me, I was like, that is one of the best ways to do it, because it's still allowing you to say, hey, here's some really creative stuff I made, which is great. You want to show off fun, creative, maybe out of the box images, and you want future clients to maybe see that to drive, different traffic to your website and to your, hopefully maybe to create a new line of client. But that, to me, I think was definitely one of the best ways to handle it, because you're being upfront, you're being clear, but you're still getting to show off the images because yeah, I think, this one, I think we both agree on. When you just drop those images directly into your portfolio, when you're mixing it with, your analogy of, say, you have two side by side, a family in the field that you took on a Wednesday at noon,
Right.
Because that's when the family was available. That was a client, they booked it, etc. Versus the family, the model family that was hired, that brought in a stylist, that you were able to choose perfect lighting scenario, etc. The two are not going to be the same. And so when you have a little bit of that in your portfolio, maybe that can be good for you as a photographer to learn from, to be like, hey, like, I need to educate my clients more on, maybe I can show them, hey, this was, a less ideal session, and here's a ideal session. You can use it as a tool, but when you just start like feathering those images into your portfolio and not, acknowledging that these were paid models.
Right.
Yeah, I think that can be a little bit deceiving, because I'm going to hire you and be like, man, I want to look like this family. Let's go to that same field. And even at the end of the day, the photographer could use all the same equipment, and the images potentially might be a bit of a letdown to that client, because
Absolutely. Yep.
the photographer, what they didn't get to, and they didn't get to in that, they just created pictures of this really pretty model, or this model family, or whatever. That's it, period. They didn't really learn anything. Everything was spoon fed to them.
Right.
And, monkey see, monkey do. Like, I, for the longest time, always joked about my friends that like live in, the mountains of Colorado. Like, literally go stand on that hilltop. Let me put on my 70-200, sit back here, and like click, boom,
gorgeous,
magic.
right.
And it's like, and again, not to downplay. I mean, there's a lot more to it sometimes, but these just the background is beautiful, and
Environment matters.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up, I was like, it'd be like, well, when I go out to visit, some of my family out in the Northwest, me going to the Oregon coast and putting in a portfolio of, say, me shooting a family cliffside at Cannon Beach.
Right.
And then, but being in Ohio and going, see what I can do?
on the lake at Eastwood Metro Park.
Right. It's not going to look the same. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And a lot of that matters.
It does.
But I think if you're open to your client, and I think that's good. I mean, there are people, we both traveled for photography, and that's definitely one of your things. You brought up Colorado. You shoot a lot in Colorado. You've shot, I think, on the Oregon coast.
Yeah.
Now we mention it.
Yep.
In California. And so for having for you in there, but the example of maybe somebody, your average local family photographer who isn't getting those opportunities to all of a sudden have something completely unrealistic, I think, plays a lot into it. But you hit on a good point. You want to move in a direction, and sometimes using those styled shoots to help show people maybe this is what we can do is I think is a good use of that as long as you're being honest about it, and you're not lying to your client. Oh yeah, it's going to look just like this. Trust me, man.
Yeah.
Photo's going to be great.
Right. that then I think is a great kind of little transition, but I think when you say that, something that's been a really key part of my business for a long time is this term we use. We call it the ideal client. I attended a workshop, probably 8-9 years ago, that did end with a styled shoot. But we'll talk actually about that here in a minute. But the whole 3-day workshop was all about, it was more focused on business and marketing and identifying your ideal client. So how do you identify them? Well, first you have to know more. You have to be really introspective on like who you are as a business, as a person.
Right.
Then you have to then transfer that into like, how do I reach that person? Like you have to know who that person is. So we spent a whole day literally like writing up, just working through who is the ideal client, all with the end goal of creating a funnel, starting maybe the widest net being like your website, or some of those really just easy, like people could accidentally stumble across. So that's the big wide net. But the second they're on your website, they're already in the funnel. Right. And so how do you funnel them? The colors, it's all that basic marketing stuff. There's a freshman year writing class. One of our books was everything. It was titled "Everything's an Argument." Right. The text font you use, the colors, the first image that pops up on your website, it's all speaking to someone. Or it's drawing them in, or it's pushing them away. It's doing something. It is doing something, period. So we learned all about that and creating that funnel. And within that, one of the biggest things was obviously like creating imagery to draw in that ideal client. So if your ideal client is, if you're like, hey, I started out just shooting my friends, in a field, and I really want to grow into doing more in-home styled sessions with families or with couples and things like that. But I want to do it, but I don't have it in my portfolio. People only buy what they see. How do I get that in my portfolio? Now, I think this is where we can I would say a style shoot or a workshop.
Sure.
That's where those come into play. That's the benefit of those, is like I can add these images to my portfolio. I could spend 6 months paying, maxing out credit cards if I have to book every single styled shoot workshop that does in-home sessions so that I can build a portfolio and practice how to do it. And I think that practice part, to me, that's the key. The key of a quality workshop where it's not just, show up, pretty people, styled, done, and just push the button, but it truly involves a skill that you're improving. We talked before this podcast even about like, hey, I want to learn studio lighting. Having a paid model for that in a workshop is key, because I'm not wanting to learn about how to pose.
Right.
So I want to have a model who can just move on her own. It sounds bad, but like you almost, in that scenario, you kind of ignore the person you're taking a picture of, because I'm focusing on the angle of my light or the placement of the flag or whatever it might be. So I'm really focusing on a skill that doesn't involve the person so much, but you still need a person there to help practice. So if there's a skill involved in the workshop styled shoot, I think that's what elevates it to a beneficial component. But again, if it's just purely show up and take some pretty pictures, that's when it starts becoming like, I don't know, the purpose of it. What's the goal of it?
And I think it's okay to have marketing material, for advertising, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah, they just think it's a stretch sometimes. We do see photographers, and we all know them where, most of their portfolio might actually be made up with stylized things, and it's stuff they're paying for, not what they're getting paid for. An example of kind of the same thing, I've attended a few photography conferences, and I was in a session with Chris Knight. I mentioned him earlier. Yeah. And love his style, really cool. And he has a very studio lighting focus, which is I'm into. And, I get the lighting, so I wanted just to hear it in person. Yep. And meet the guy, be able to ask him questions. And, Lindsay Adler happened to be in there as well. And it ended up being, a great session and everything. And he's showing his set up, and he had a pretty regular guy as his model. If you've ever seen some of the stuff where we've got maybe some gruffy older guy,
Well, I've even seen him.
like
He'll just pull somebody from the audience too sometimes
and use them.
You know,
yeah.
So
and
he does pull a regular person in,
and he does great, and it's a good learning experience. And at the end, everybody got an opportunity to go up and shoot. I personally don't take those opportunities. But what I do is I pull out my phone. I have my gear with me. I have my camera bag. I take it to every session I go to when I go to these things. But I'm taking pictures of kind of how he staged things, or kind of what the lighting is,
where the light is set up,
where's angled, right?
Yeah, because that's the learning,
right.
I mean, again, because sorry to cut you off, he set it up. He set up the light, he put the flags, and he put the stool in perfect relation to, so literally
exactly
10 people could walk up and they're going to take essentially the 10 of the same exact photo.
Exactly.
And then throw it in their portfolio and look at this awesome studio shot I created with lights I can't afford and with
and I did, and he shoots, he shoots, I think he still shoots pro photo. I think at the time he was shooting, and everything. And, it's great, and you get to see, and he'll do some things, and I like to be there and go, okay, I wouldn't have thought to do it that way or place it exactly like that, and you're picking up these nuggets of knowledge.
Totally.
But, without a doubt, I would say 6 months later, I'm on Instagram, and I see
that grumpy old guy.
And I was like, oh, Chris Knight posted. No, it was someone from there had posted it, and going back to, something we sort of, touched on earlier. He didn't mention that it was at a workshop in the post. I'm not going to call anybody out, but it was really like they set this up, and it stood out, at least in their Instagram portfolio. Because I clicked, I was like, oh, cool, another portrait artist, right?
Yeah. Or maybe oh, what have they been doing since then?
Right.
That could be was this maybe?
Excellent point. Yeah, maybe it had a real impact on their style, and they're showing that. And then maybe if you go back, you can see how it's impacted them since then. But not in that case. Right?
Sure.
Right. So that's kind of where you start to go, no, that's not really representative. But if you take those things and maybe you incorporate it into it, maybe that's what I want to do. I would love to shoot more of that type of portraiture.
Yeah.
And that's finding that ideal client and starting to massage your images, but you have to be able to also make them yours and not somebody else's.
Yeah. I think something I've done a lot over the years is I basically do my own styled shoots. And it doesn't, again, the outcome could be equally as deceiving. There's still an aspect of using a model and a stylist and things like that. But for me, ironically, living in the Midwest, and we have a couple months of pretty slow, bad weather, kind of the winter blues kicks in around January, February, and that creative bug, where I'm refreshed, I'm rejuvenated from the end of the previous season, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go, and I got nothing to do. I've got this empty studio, and so that's where over the years we've done them together. We've pulled in, whether it's just super simple, pulling a friend or a model, or other times we've done a little more elaborate stuff. But again, in that sense, again, that benefit of having the ability to pull, your own styled shoot together,
right,
I think can fight off that burnout, if you will, so again, there's the good side of keeping flexing that creative muscle and getting to using styled shoots in a positive way.
And I will say that even from a marketing and advertising perspective, you're one of the people I think who does it right, because even when you do your styled shoots, they still fit your style, right? So we think as photographers, we have to think more beyond clicking the shutter.
Yeah.
Right. There's everything before and then everything after, the way you edit and how you're kind of calling those images to fit kind of what your thing is. So I don't think I've ever would have put you in that category, and I didn't even think about it. But yeah, I've been in your styled shoots where I've come and assisted or shot also, and I've never would have put it that way, because when you do it, it is you're adapting or trying to seek out a new client, or you're very clear, I'm just flexing some creative muscle. Look at this cool shot.
Yeah. So I think I think we would say, there's a temptation to deceive, or there's not any temptation.
I don't think it's
I don't think the goal.
intentional,
I would say, yeah,
right.
sometimes it's not intentional. Maybe if it is, that's a whole other issue.
Right.
Good luck on that.
They won't be around long to worry about anyway.
It's not, again, it's not malicious intent, but I think sometimes as creatives, we just see really pretty things and we're excited to show it off. So, even taking the bad intention out of it completely and really allowing it to still, just be, there's still a danger there. I think as creatives, especially, you had to fight against it. And so using it, the positives, whether it's learning a new skill, whether it's like, if I want to learn lighting, or I want to learn how to pose better, I'm going to choose, there's some amazing photographers out there that create supernatural emotive images, and I'm always been drawn to like big emotion and, things like that. So they're the ones that I follow and I seek out, and I love watching their behind the scenes videos or their Instagrams, because you get to see, like you said, their end goal, their end pictures are beautiful, but I love seeing their behind the scenes stuff. What I can learn in 20 seconds of a behind the scenes clip goes way beyond staring at their portfolio. And that's what I think people overlook so many times. To your point, you're dead on. Like, that behind the scenes cell phone pic of Chris Knight's studio setup is replicatable. Like, you can take that with you to your living room or to your full-blown studio. It doesn't matter. You can make
it your own, because you're actually learning what was done versus just looking at that end of the day. It's kind of cliche, but it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. Right. And the whole like what's in your bag question, it's kind of neat. Like, okay, like there's to a degree. I think we talked if gear matters or not.
Right.
See episode 2.
Wink. Another wink.
Yeah, but like as you said, it depends. What's in your bag? That question can be fun just to chat about, but how you use it. Why do you use a 70-200 for this shot? Or why do you use, this lighting setup to create this look? And I think that's the growth and the maturity that creatives, the journey that they take. It goes from, I just want to take pretty pictures, which matters, because if I don't take pretty pictures or I don't have a portfolio, no one's going to pay me.
That's right. I'm not getting paid at that point. Right.
Then you move on to, the first workshop I went to was, I want to create pretty pictures. Now I'm like, I want to learn something new.
Right.
I'm just bored. I'm burnt out. I'm whatever, so sometimes it's like, I don't even care if anyone sees these but me.
Exactly.
I know you resonate with that. I always give you a hard time. You have a portfolio that no one's ever seen.
Never seen.
Instagram
never gets updated. Site never gets updated. I'll shoot and I keep it, and because sometimes it's about being creative, and sometimes it's about learning. I bore easily, and so I always like to try new things. We've ventured into video now, and we're doing that sort of work, and always the drone kind of videography and photography is different, and talk about portraiture as kind of a passion, something I like to do more, and I want to start a project this winter during the dead time when there's nothing else to do in Ohio, and you never know what the weather is going to be like.
Yeah.
But I'm also at the same time watching landscape photographers on YouTube.
It's
amazing.
I know. I seriously, the last 3 people I just followed are all wildlife or landscape photographers.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I Googled 400 millimeter and 600 millimeter lenses, like for no reason. But I'm like, that's what I need. And, going back to Gearhead, I'm like, obviously, if I had that lens and
it'd be perfect.
Happened to live in Norway.
Who doesn't need a 400 millimeter 2.8?
It's
just
true.
saying.
Yeah. I'm moving to Norway with my 400. That's the only lens you need too, apparently. But yeah, so I think you said it earlier. We'll recap it, but it's keeping it realistic, keeping expectations real. At that point, you're good. But I don't know what else. Anything else? I feel like we've.
No, I think you made the really good points about how to use it and being able to use it to grow and learn as well. And it's good when you're working with another creative too. You mentioned tagging during the workshop, and I think you get additional benefits. Maybe we can touch on another future episode, and that's about collaboration with other creatives.
Totally.
you know, and being kind of that open about, you know, how you're working and who you're working with and kind of the effort that goes behind these images instead of showing it off as just your own, maybe that deceptive part when it's just thrown into a portfolio. So I think there's good ways to use styled shoots as a part of your portfolio. And other times I think it's much better to, well, keep it real.
Is that your life motto?
Yeah, keeping it real. You know me.
It's tattooed on your
That's right.
back.
That's right. It's a giant eagle, and it holds. It doesn't say "e pluribus unum." It says "keeping it real."
I like it. I like it. Well, yeah, I love it. I think that's just hopefully a good reminder. I know for us, for me, you know, it comes up. It comes up a lot. Sometimes I'll have to fight against, you know, that little tick, and I see something, I'm like, that looks different than what they normally post.
Right. Don't comment. Don't comment.
Jeremy's just like block,
delete.
I usually get there. I'm just not as decisive as you are in the moment.
No, then I don't have to worry about her seeing it. You know, it's cutting that dishonesty out.
Cool, man. Well, until next time.
Till next time, man.
Dope.
All right.
Peace.
When I was a kid, my dad used to say, don't let anything stand in your way. Stand tall, think clear. Don't let them see you ain't no fear.
Matters, bruh.
Dude, look at that camera.